I was fortunate enough to have a job for 20 years that I lived my childhood dream. I was able to deploy all over the world, to do some pretty incredible things, and to be around some of the most incredible Americans that this country has produced. So being in this vehicle takes me back to the times that, like back in Afghanistan, when I was riding around with my friends, um, either getting into trouble or, chasing bad guys.
Fasten your seatbelt.
All right, Citizen J podcast is coming to you from the road, quite literally. I'm out here on the scenic corridor for 30A. It is in South Walton, Florida, and it is stunningly gorgeous. This is one of the most beautiful sections of beach I have ever seen. And today my driver is Daisson Hickel. And Dyson, let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
All right, Mr. Hickel. I know you have a special ops background, as they like to say, and you special ops guys are always quite the mystery. So,
Are we?
Yeah, always. It's something we love to unpack. We want to know more about you, but you keep things close to the chest.
It's like an onion. You got to peel the onion
It
back.
is exactly like an onion. So, what brings you to 30A and this Sand Rover Rally we are attending?
That is a. Do you want the short version or the long version?
Oh, I want the long one.
Okay, all right. So, back in 2010, I was assigned at my unit. I was a Green Beret. I was assigned to 7th Special Forces Group in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And in my career field, at some point you have to go kind of give time to be an instructor. So I volunteered to be a combat dive instructor in Key West, Florida. During my time down in Key West, while I was teaching commandos how to kind of survive in the maritime environment, my unit moved from North Carolina to Eglin Air Force Base.
Okay.
So when I returned back to my unit, I found myself here, and I spent the next 10 years deploying to Afghanistan and throughout Central and South America. And in those 10 years, I would always come back to this place, and just intrigued about the people of 30A, and I started my first business while in Afghanistan. It's called the Java Can. And I convinced the owner of the brand 30A to let me serve coffee at the 2nd annual Sand Rover Rally.
Okay.
And I was, just passing out coffee. And then over the years, I, developed this relationship with Mike Ragsdale, the owner and founder of 30A. And that's kind of where it first started. It started with this love affair that I had with the vehicle. I drove Land Rovers Defenders all over Afghanistan. After one deployment, I came back and I bought one, my first Defender, and I would just cruise around all the other crazy guys up and down 38 with all these weird looking trucks. And on my last year in service, I went to Mike and I'd be like, "Hey, listen, I have a short period of time where I could, intern with, different companies in preparation for my retirement." So I went up to him. I said, "Let me take over the Sand Rover Rally, and let me put my own little spin on it." And this is my second year running the event.
Okay.
And I'm bringing people and personalities, not just nationally but internationally, to come here and tell their stories to this little corner of the world that we call Santa Rosa Beach.
It's a gorgeous spot to land, that's for sure. Do you think, so you mentioned that these were, the Defender specifically is something we're obviously highlighting, but it's not the only vehicle that's featured here at this event.
No, so Sand Rover, it kind of gives this misconception that it's just for Land Rover.
Mm-hmm.
Land Rover Gulf Coast Land Rover is the main sponsor for the event. But here, everyone is welcome. So if you drive a Bronco or a Tacoma, Defenders, we've even had Volkswagen buses. Last year, we had a guy with a Mercedes Unimog.
Oh, I love it.
That
That's
came
awesome.
here. So, people all shapes and sizes. And the cool thing about this event is that here we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes we kind of get tied down to like identity,
Yeah.
I'm part of this, social structure, or, I make this much money. My peers are, I'm friends with people in this circle.
Mm.
But here, it doesn't matter if you have the fanciest ride or the rustiest rust bucket. Here, everyone's equal.
Right.
And that's what, we love about this area and this event.
Well, and I think too, like we've been talking, the theme for all these conversations I've been having just in the last few hours, it's like everyone's enamored with the stories that everyone's telling. And I think these vehicles are just, I don't know, billboards in a sense, or kind of just a postcard of all the stories that we get to experience with our vehicles. It's not about what vehicle you drive. It's about that story that comes with this vehicle. I think that's why I'm so excited for this specific event, is to just walk around, be intrigued by the uniqueness of someone's ride, and then be like, hey, tell me your story. Where does this come from? Why did you build this? So specifically for you, was Afghanistan the core reason for being drawn to the Defender series, or?
As a kid, who didn't want to be like Indiana Jones?
That's true.
In these cars, you could be a race car driver, you could be an explorer, you could be whoever you want. It is a representation of the kid you are inside. I was fortunate enough to have a job for 20 years that I lived my childhood dream. I was able to deploy all over the world, to do some pretty incredible things, and to be around some of the most incredible Americans that this country has produced. Mm. So being in this vehicle takes me back to the times that, like back in Afghanistan, when I was riding around with my friends, either getting into trouble or, chasing bad guys.
Right.
So it's prolonging, or it's continuing my passion of the good old days.
Mm. So the few individuals that have a military background that I have been able to connect with or develop friendships with, so you get kind of these more personal conversations. A theme that I seem to notice is that camaraderie that happens from your teammates when you're out in Afghanistan, out on these crazy things, the skills and the relationships that you develop, because it's high stress, you depend on each other, you have to work together to accomplish missions. A lot of that seems to be emulated or similar to maybe like some type of an expedition or a long-term overland trip where you're going out for several days with a group of people into the backcountry, no other support. And while, of course, the risks may be vastly different, I feel like a lot of the guys seem to really gravitate to this overlanding style because we build for purpose, we build to be self-reliant, and then we depend on each other. You have a different skill set than I do, and we go out together, and if something happens, we work together to solve those problems.
Right.
Do you think is that something that you recognize as a part of this off-road exploration culture? Or?
Absolutely. I think what I've learned with being in the overland culture is that there's enormous overlaps with the military. Mm-hmm. When we plan operations, we plan to the smallest detail. And when you start thinking about Sir Ernest Shackleton, or President or Eisenhower, or some of these generals that led the fight into Europe during World War II, or some of the heroes from Vietnam, it was as much risk as it was preparation. And I think there's a beautiful combination there that makes for incredible stories. Let's plan for let's plan anything that we could think of that could go wrong. But at the end of the day, you throw that plan in your backpack and hope everything turns out the best way.
Right.
In my line of work, unfortunately, the added risk is that, you want to bring everyone back, but that is never promised.
Right.
So we are particular about who we bring, what we bring, in order to get everybody home. In a sense, you still get that with an expedition.
Yeah.
But you chase the glory of, man, that good story, that accomplished mission, and that's common in both scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I see a lot of similarities and a lot of overlap.
Yeah. How often do you get? I mean, I know this is your home base, and this is a beautiful place to explore. But do you kind of stay in the southeast corridor of the United States, or do you get a chance to travel internationally, or?
Well, now that I'm officially out of the military, I'm working with 30A for this event.
Got it.
But I'm always chasing a good expedition. And there have been talks about me doing work outside of the state and outside of the country. But we'll have to wait to see. We'll have to wait to see.
I'm guessing you have a special set of skills that are.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Like my friend Alex Bescovy, he is planning some pretty incredible stuff. So when I hear things like this, I'm like, man, how can I get in on some of this action?
Yeah.
Knowing that I spent 20 years doing that same thing, but it's almost like it's never enough.
Mm.
You've been exposed to the life on the road and a life of adventure, and it's I don't think it's a feeling you could ever satisfy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like yourself. Being on that motorcycle. When can you say you could really truly hang that up?
Yeah. I don't. I mean, unless your body physically says you can't anymore.
Right.
But yeah, mentally, you're all in until I just physically can't.
As long as I'm able. I will.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it's all back to there's this mindset that binds us all in this pursuit of living, of experiencing, of interacting with each other. That has been a powerful experience for me, and something that the vehicles are fun, the adventures are fun, the campsites are fun, but like the interaction with each other has really become like a huge part. So I guess to tie that all into your experience with your brothers in the military and those bonds that you create, it's been really fun for me as a civilian to interact with individuals like yourself and glean from your skill sets and your knowledge and your experience. I love the way the two overlap. It's not that you guys are just trying to find something that was similar to your service. Us as civilians, we can never experience what you guys experienced, but we can sit and have conversations with you, and I think learn as best we can from those moments. So I think just as an individual, I really value individuals like yourself who are willing to share.
Well, my wife is a nurse, and during COVID, I would remember hearing stories on how they put their necks on the line. Mm. And they might not be in like far off lands, but the relationships that they built of their colleagues in the trenches sound exactly like the relationships of guys on the battlefield. Mm. You're putting yourself at risk, and you're there with people who are doing the same things you are. Mm-hmm. And now that we're a couple of years with that era behind us, we can now reflect on, what? I'm glad I had this person next to me. And really, I think the treasure in all of this, whether COVID, being in the military, being on an expedition, is that you really think about the guys that were next to you. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, when you're laying your deathbed, you're going to think about those people when you were in those places. And sometimes it's some of the darkest times almost make the best moments. And I've seen that as a constant theme throughout my life and throughout the lives of my friends that find themselves in this middle ground between comfort and danger. And they always think about, I was there with someone who had my back. And out of that, you know, you tend to have some pretty incredible stories.
Yeah. I think as a society, though, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think, again, another reason I think those experiences are so valuable to share to those of us who are seeking those experiences, right? We're like, we know we're missing something, or we know those are good things we want to go after. We're just disconnected from each other in so many ways. And so I know that like overlanding and off-roading are very much connected through social media, but I almost see it as like a necessary evil sometimes. It's great that it connects us as individuals, but we do this thing that really has nothing to do with social media.
Right.
We don't need technology. There are ways to travel and explore that really don't need a lot of technology.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you could turn the camera off and just be aware of the environment that's surrounding you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you lose that awareness when the camera's on, or when you're thinking about like, well, how am I going to look to the rest of the world looking on the other side of my Facebook account?
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I mean, for instance, we're here, we're driving. We're actually leaving Santa Rosa Beach, and on a beautiful sunny day, this bay is crystal clear, and it's like glass, and you see people on boats and on paddleboards, and it's like taking a photo of the sunset. It never just comes out right. So sometimes you just need to put the phone away and enjoy it, and have the memory and have the picture live up here.
Yeah. And you have to remind yourself to do that. I mean, I've been fortunate to be on some incredible vistas and see some incredible parts of the country. And you really have to be just like, I mean, we almost rejoice a little bit when our cell phones don't work.
Oh,
and
for
you're
sure.
able to forget about them.
Absolutely.
Because they're no longer going off, and you have to be like, where is my phone? I haven't seen it in a few hours. Like,
absolutely.
Somehow it's like, victory. I've done it.
Yeah, exactly.
I've broken the tether, the leash from this thing. Yeah, I think that's why a lot of us keep coming back. It's like this therapy that breaks us away from the monotony that kind of enslaves you. And I know some of the stuff we have to do, we have responsibilities and things that are necessary for us to take care of. But man, it feels good to just like, it's freedom. It's the pursuit of freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I remember this one. I'll never forget, and I think about it, and I get chills every time I think about it. But I remember in my fire base in Afghanistan, I would climb this mountain on a fire base many times by myself in the middle of the night, just so I could get to the top and watch the sunrise. And that place was my church. I remember a good friend of mine, he was killed in front of me, and I would go up there, and I can't tell you what happened up there, but there I felt like I could speak to God. And it's the craziest thing. And I get chills just thinking about it. And I can't describe to you in a picture or in a drawing how that looks. And it could only be experienced. So if there's anything I could do, like on camera or write in a book or in an article, I would express, you have to go and chase those things yourself.
Yeah.
Because, man, when you're in your last days, you're gonna think back, it's like, man, why didn't I take that chance and do that?
Right.
Because when it's lights out, that's it.
Yeah.
And tomorrow is not promised to anyone.
Right.
And I left that desert with that with that thing very clear in my mind that tomorrow is not promised.
Yeah.
So I take advantage when I'm with my kids or I'm with good friends.
Yeah.
Like the Sand Rover Rally just reminds me every year, like, once a year I'm in this place where we could all talk about the same thing, and we have this togetherness that we kind of lose throughout the year, when you're in the rat race.
Yep.
And I mean that's why I love this area. That's why I love this event, and that's why I try to chase these moments, because you know what, damn it, you might just never get it again.
Right. Well, I mean, and just to reference a story we were hearing earlier, to be in your 80s and to have lived a life and to be like, I'm running out of time. I think to me that's so inspiring, because I want to live and still be in my late 80s and be like, I'm running out of time. I'm still pursuing. I'm still going after.
I'm running out of time. And that's exactly it. Every day. You are. I mean, if you just wake up with that mantra, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
I mean, if that doesn't light this fire in your ass.
Right.
And just get this burning desire to man, I need to learn a language, buy a one-way ticket. Do something crazy. Just to live a little. And I think that's what we're all really just craving right now. We had a couple of years of COVID, and it just gave you enough time to sit and think, when this pandemic is over, I'm going to try something new, and I'm going to be risky for the first time in my life.
Right.
And I think that's the question a lot of people are asking themselves.
No, I agree. I think I'm also trying to find a way to harness that. We all experience that. And I think we are referencing, when we do chat with each other, we reference that period of time. And what was that like for you? Let's not forget that. Let's use that as a marker and especially here in the United States. I mean, it's a weird time, and we're realizing the fragility of our freedoms.
Oh, for sure.
And we are still in an incredible country with incredible opportunities, and one of the best out there, hands down. But I think we're realizing what we have isn't just given. It's not a given that we wake up every morning. These are things that were fought for. They were done intentionally, and we kind of have a responsibility to them. As an American citizen, it's you have this incredible freedom to travel, to move around, to speak, to communicate with people. We should all be doing that at a level. Not every country has that.
No. And I know this is not a political podcast or anything like that, but I will say this. You hear there's some buzzwords that come up all the time, and a lot of it's male privilege or white privilege or all these different isolated privileges. What no one talks about is American privilege. It's go and take a trip somewhere in Africa or in the Middle East.
Right.
If you think that you're just so secluded and with your hands tied, go to some of these other places that you really can't say or do what you really want.
Right.
My mother came from Colombia, and I was the first American born in this country. And I remember, my grandmother telling me stories about how it was in Medellin, Colombia, the explosions, the murders. And to live in this country, and this place is not perfect.
Right.
But man, you could close your eyes and think of a time in the past when this place was really, really bad, or other places that were really, really bad, and people fight tooth and nail to come here.
Right.
Someone said something pretty incredible to me just yesterday. There are 1 billion people on this earth that would trade what they have with what you have.
Yeah.
Just think of your worst day. Someone is still willing to trade what they have for what you have on one of your worst days.
No, it's so true. And I mean, to tie it all back into what we do, there's that simplicity, and maybe that's why it becomes something that is therapeutic in a way. It brings us back to that reality specifically, more so than other experiences.
Exactly.
And so we pursue that because it's like, no, I need to figure out I need to be made aware of what really matters again.
Exactly. Oh, for sure. And, I might have a limited perspective here, but, when this country was fighting a war, or 2 wars, or 3 wars, depending on all the conflicts that we have around the world, we really didn't bicker about the things that we bicker now. So it appears to me, and I could be wrong, but it appears to me that when times are good, we try to actively find things to fight about.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a human nature, and it's almost this cycle that when things are good, things will inevitably be bad. And some of it's just out of our own creation. So, well, maybe that's a byproduct of how good we have it.
Well, you think, if we're going to get philosophical on this one. So, but I think the human nature, in order to be healthy, one of the elements is to struggle.
Oh, for sure.
So, to that point of things are very good. We are the wealth of our nation is incredible. The fact that the entire nation is in the 1% of the world's wealth. Regardless of where you live in the United States, you're in the 1% of the world.
Right.
We are so wealthy here. And that's not to take away from suffering and hard times that people are going through, but it's reality. Those are the numbers. And it is concerning that there are things that just seem so silly. It's like, we want to go to battle over that topic. No, that's a conversation we can have. But to almost want to take up arms against each other within our country over that,
for sure.
Are we itching for struggle? Is it so non-existent in our day-to-day, truly, that we are creating our own? And I don't know the answer to that, but
I'm reminded about this old saying: tough times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create tough times. So it's almost like it's inevitable that you're in a cycle. There's almost this human development on the ebbs and flows of struggle. Mm-hmm. And the struggle is what builds character. But it's that character that creates the balance to not struggle as much. And would you give up for having those times of comfort? Well, it's almost you give up some of the character, in our case, of what it means to be an American and living a life of liberty and in the pursuit of that we kind of give up that identity because times are easier than they were before.
Yeah. It's just a given. We don't even have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
So many. Our generation has not seen. I know we've definitely been in wars, and we've seen our guys going into other countries. But it's we really haven't had to have the Vietnam experiences.
Yeah, you want to find some perspective. Talk to someone that survived D-Day.
Yeah.
That we lost, countless of some of our nation's men to just get on a beach.
Yeah.
And just enter a war that we had no intention to fight.
Right.
Talk to some Vietnam vets that would go into the jungle, and half of their guys never returned.
Yeah.
Though I could remember some of the war stories, and I could talk about certain things with my buddies, but I try to be very careful who I boast in front of. I, in a way, lived a privileged life in the military. That, compared to other eras, we did not face the amount of loss that other generations had to face.
Yeah. And
isn't that part of the cycle?
Right. Right.
Didn't they call them the greatest generation? The era of World War II, where the majority of the men went to go fight, and a large amount of those never came back.
Right.
I don't think that our society could stomach the amount of loss that they faced during that time.
We definitely have forgotten. I think we've forgotten what that was and how devastating that is.
And you made a reference. It's like, isn't that way? As we get older, we chase history to kind of remind us of the times that we either never lived or were a part of, but that we could kind of gain some perspective.
Yeah.
And almost, it's like a lot of people say, like, "Boy, I was born in the wrong era." Like they almost want to like go back in time and be a part of a time where it was easier in a way, but more exciting.
Right.
But we create hard times for ourselves in pursuit of that.
Well, I mean, I think it always feels like it's coming back to the same thing. But again, like this, I want to connect with people. I want to tell this, and I think maybe that's a lot of the catalyst for the podcast. If I'm looking really introspectively, I want to communicate with, I want to share stories, I want to hear stories because of that love of history and love of not only my own experience, but your experience. Tell me how that changed you, because I can't walk in a, first generation Colombian family, like all the culture that comes from that and the experience of growing up a first generation. That's a unique experience.
It didn't hit me It really didn't hit me until, I'm going to be honest, until a couple of years ago.
Really?
So, when I was 19, I joined the Army. I joined the Army right after 9/11. I was a senior in high school. I remember I was in biology class when I heard about the Twin Towers.
Really?
And 11 months later, I was in the Army.
Wow.
And I was in line to get chow, to get lunch, and one of the drill instructors said, "Hey, we're going to Iraq, boys." We're like, "What? Don't you mean Afghanistan?" Like, what are we doing? And then less than 6 months later, I was crossing the border into Iraq. And it wasn't until I was in Iraq that I met, a group of Green Berets, and I was like, man, that is what I want to do. So I joined the Special Forces, and I finally, toughed it out and made it through. And my first deployment as a Green Beret, I was deployed to Colombia.
Really?
And it was like serving my country.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah.
And I remember I had one job where I was sent to where my family's from.
Really?
And it was a sensation that I'm in a very, very interesting time in my life.
Yeah.
And this happened maybe 15 years ago. And in the last 3 years of me being in the military, I was assigned to, I don't want to say a special team, but a smaller team that we focused just on Colombia.
Okay.
And I would travel all over Colombia, working different problems, knowing that I'm affecting in real time some of the struggles that my family went through. And because of those struggles, they moved to the United States, and I was created there, and I was able to just really get back. And it wasn't until then that I had this appreciation of what it meant to be American, what it meant to be Colombian, but what it meant to be a soldier, So I left that experience, a very unique experience that I really don't share with a lot of other guys. But I left the military knowing that, I really have to give credit to my family for bringing me, for allowing me to be where I am, and to kind of give back, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
So it was a cool story for sure.
Do you think that as we get older too, life is just a big lesson in gratitude?
Oh, without a doubt.
I feel like that is like one of the core principles of like so many monumental experiences, especially like in my, they'll say the last decade. It's just been like the takeaway is always like, oh, I'm grateful for. Wow, what a privilege to have gotten to experience that.
Absolutely.
Like, I wonder too if that's like, as a nation, we have been given so much, but we've forgotten to be grateful.
Yeah, and it's interesting. As much as we could complain about this generation and some of the things that we fight about, the other good thing that we're bringing into the conversation is this notion of daily gratitude.
Yeah.
That is now starting to be common in our vocabulary. So everything comes with good and bad. I'm glad that is finally coming into the that's becoming a popular practice that I hope that continues to grow.
Well, I will say, I would agree with you. I think while it is easy to pick apart the current generation for a variety of reasons, the attention to mental health.
Oh, for sure.
That maybe we've been forced to have the conversation about, but it's a good thing. Or however it got here, it's a good thing, because I think, and maybe even too, like, I mean, that greatest generation that you referenced, the men that came home after World War II and Vietnam and Korea, we didn't have a vocabulary for what they had experienced,
right,
and what they were going to experience when they returned to regular everyday life.
Right.
I mean, I have a buddy who talks about going into the grocery store and just being so overwhelmed with the variety of product on the shelf after spending extended periods of time over in Afghanistan, and how that was just overwhelming to him. And so he, seems so silly. So why would that be what causes a breakdown? But we now have kind of an understanding of
Absolutely.
that. And I don't know, we're moving towards, a positive change with mental health and the awareness of that. But my other concern is, I'm from California with a massive homeless population. And whether or not certain parties want to admit it, it's a huge veteran population that is not being serviced in a way that I believe is honorable, in a way, like as a nation that should be grateful for what these men did.
When you think about what we did, what inherently happened with the World War II generation, is that we put them back to work, where we didn't necessarily do that with the Vietnam generation.
Yeah.
I will tell you from my own experience, during my transition out of the military, I found myself in a dark place when I didn't have something to do. Maybe it's not the cure, but it is a strategy to get your mind into a place where it could buy you some time before you do something drastic.
Right.
Right.
It's a piece of it, at least.
It is a piece of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. But you are going to drive us on the way back.
All right.
How's that?
Got it. Well, Dyson, so let's recircle just for the folks at home. 30A Sand Rover Rally.
Yep.
Annual event.
It's an annual event.
In South Walton, Florida.
That's right.
So by the time this airs, you will have missed 2023, but there's one coming in 2024.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I'm either getting a Defender. Either way, I'm coming back.
That's it.
I have to come back. I have to come back.
You're part of the community.
No, it's been a great experience, and thank you so much for the conversation and just honestly being vulnerable and honest and letting me drive your vehicle.
Yeah, no problem. And anytime.
We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
And not get stuck.
Or maybe get stuck.
Oh, well, why not?
That's the fun of it. Look at it. That's just like, what am I getting
Look
myself
at
into?
all of these ponds. What are we doing?
There you go. That's fun.
There you go. All right, everyone. That's a wrap.